As a baseball fan, winter is just the worst. But every year, before the frost begins to thaw, we get our first taste of spring through baseball. In early to mid-February of each year, pitchers and catchers report to their team's camps, followed shortly by the rest of their teammates. The days grow longer, and out of hibernation comes both hope and happiness. Spring training has been an annual tradition for as long as any of us can remember. A tradition of waking up the body from the long, harsh winter and preparing for a summer of hot dogs and home runs. By now, this February through March ritual is routine for both players and fans. But was it always this way? Who were the first teams to do a form of spring training? Where did they play? How did we settle on the two leagues we have today? Welcome back to the Bad Baseball Fan. Let's talk about the evolution of spring training. Like I said, spring training has been a fundamental part of the baseball season for as long as any of us can remember. But just how old is it? Well, historians seem to offer up different dates. It kinda depends on who you ask. The earliest instance of a team going south for preseason was the New York Mutuals in 1869, who did their camp in New Orleans. Following suit, the next season the Cincinnati Red Stockings and Chicago White Stockings also held organized camps in the Big Easy. Other teams took note and created their own little spring camps. More often than not, worked into the schedules of barnstorming tours so the teams and players could make money. Prior to the barnstorming tours and out-of-town training, teams would just do their training at local indoor facilities. I also want to note that the early spring trainings were quite specifically used for getting the players back into shape, as the majority of them had to work regular jobs in the off-season to financially sustain themselves. Nowadays, spring training is an industry all its own. Another clear example of a preseason camp was the 1886 Chicago White Sox, who stopped on a barnstorming tour in Hot Springs, Arkansas for a preseason refresher. The White Sox won the pennant that year, and other organizations took note of Chicago's preseason strategy. By 1890, most major league teams were making out-of-town trips for preseason training, and the location in Hot Springs, Arkansas, used by the White Sox in 1886, slowly became the first central home of spring training baseball. Hot Springs may have been the first hotbed of spring training, hosting the White Sox, Spiders, Tigers, Pirates, Reds, Dodgers, Cardinals, and Red Sox, but it never was the exclusive location for the preseason. Major league teams also held camps in several cities in Florida, obviously New Orleans, several Caribbean islands. There were camps even in DC and as far out as Honolulu, Hawaii. But as the years rolled on, despite happening in several cities, spring training began to be centralized in Hot Springs, Arkansas, as the natural hot springs there provided a great place for work and recovery. The town built a baseball complex to accommodate the influx of baseball players and fans every spring. Van Johnson Park was built in 1894, Majestic Park in 1909, and Fogle Field in 1912 to allow for the playing of these preseason games. Spring training eventually moved on from Arkansas, with teams eventually settling in Florida beginning in the 1910s and Arizona in the 1920s. But before that, Hot Springs saw some incredible baseball. Over 130 Hall of Famers played ball in Hot Springs during its heyday, and it even saw what might be the most significant home run in baseball history. On St. Patrick's Day of 1918, Babe Ruth, playing an emergency game at first, hit a home run that would later be measured at 573 feet, landing in a pond across the street from the field. This was Ruth's first time ever playing anything other than pitcher, and from that day on, he went on to play in the field progressively more, eventually making the full switch to position player and becoming the most prolific hitter to ever play the game. The spot where the ball landed is now memorialized with a marker at the Arkansas Alligator Farm and Petting Zoo. Major league teams eventually permanently left Hot Springs, and generally speaking moved to either Florida or Arizona. Florida held spring training camps as far back as 1888, but the modern version of spring training in Florida and the Grapefruit League we have today stems from the 1913 Chicago Cubs, who trained in Tampa. 3 teams followed suit in the next 2 years, and the Grapefruit League was officially created. For over 100 years since then, Florida has remained one of, if not the, primary hotbed for preseason baseball. Until 2009, Florida hosted more than half of the major league organizations, and all but 6 MLB teams have trained there at one time or another. Teams essentially built preseason campuses in Florida, often centered around their low single-A affiliate. Many of these places have been abandoned as teams have moved on to other locations, but still exist as a reminder of the cottage industry that popped up every spring around baseball. Arizona, on the other hand, started hosting spring ball in 1929 when the Tigers trained at Riverside Park in Phoenix. It wasn't until nearly 20 years later that preseason baseball would become a permanent mainstay in Arizona when Bill Veeck, the new owner of the Cleveland Indians, moved their spring site to Tucson in 1946. He convinced the New York Giants to move with him and train in Phoenix, and the Cactus League was born. According to Bill Veeck himself, the move was made in order to sign an African-American ballplayer to Cleveland and circumvent Jim Crow laws in Florida. That African-American player was Larry Doby, who made his debut shortly after Jackie Robinson, shattering the American League color barrier. Teams slowly made their moves out to Arizona, expanding the Cactus League, and by 2009, the 2 preseason leagues saw an even 15-15 split, with each sharing half of the major league organizations. Unlike camps in Florida, though, teams often share facilities in Arizona. From its humble beginnings in the late 19th century to the modern-day spectacle it's become, spring training has truly evolved into a beloved tradition for both players and fans alike. Something consistent we can rely on as we shake off the aches of winter, taking vacations and flying down to see our favorite teams shake off the very same aches in the warm sunshine. It's not just a time for athletes to prepare for the regular season, but also an opportunity for various fandoms to come together and celebrate the sport. Even though the games don't count, there's no denying spring training's special place in the heart of America's pastime. So next time you find yourself in the warm, sun-soaked ballparks of Arizona or Florida, remember the rich history of preseason baseball and the long, winding road to where we are today. Thank you all for joining me on this exploration of spring training baseball. And happy spring. Guys, we made it. Winter is almost over and baseball is being played.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Here's to a fun 2025 season, and here's to all of you who are a part of the bad baseball fandom. Thank you so much for giving me a soapbox to talk about my lifelong passion. Because of your support, memberships are now live. Just 1 tier for now, but if you're interested, hit the join button below to consider helping grow this community around baseball. Oh yeah, merchandise is linked below as well, so check that out too. If you guys have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Anyways, one more thank you to all of you for your support. And remember, if you like baseball, like this video and subscribe for more.